So I'll get the announcement out of the way. I've decided I'm going to end the show. Reason one, I'm aiming to move this year, and that's going to be a disruption. Two, a lot of the production elements are changing. Much as the problem was with Demolition Birdie. Things just kept moving on. I'm doing a lot more 3D printing stuff, and it's getting to a point where the 3D printed stuff is going to outnumber the Bachman and Hornby and Apple stuff, which more or less undermines the whole idea of Rolly the Bachman coach. Reason three, I want to revisit and revamp my Stray Terrier series on DeviantArt. Want to give that a top to bottom do-over. I realized a misstep I made with my first incarnation, and I want to sort that out. So yeah, Rolly the Bachman coach ran for 2 years, just like Rolly the coach itself. So I guess it's time the torch is passed on to whoever decides to take up making fun of this character next. We may see somebody create Rolly the Hornby coach, Rolly the Brio coach, Rolly the 3D printed coach, for all we know. I've seen other people make homages to Rolly the coach. There's not much I can say about that that isn't innocuous, but the torch is being passed on, people. I just don't know whoever wants to next. I've seen people attempt it, I've seen people draw inspiration from other things, so yeah, there are still things I'm going to do on this channel, but if I do revisit this, it won't be on a fortnightly basis. I still have a lot of shit on my idea board, and another reason I'm having trouble continuing the series is because there are certain things that there are characters I have in mind to appear like in main roles in skits, but there aren't any faces for them, and I can't find substitutes. Duck and Mavis spring to mind. So in commemoration of 2 years of this shit, let's get to your questions. Why is Oliver your number 13, and who are numbers 11 and 12? Daisy and Boko. Why do Donald and Douglas have Edward's faces, and why does Donald have a Fowler tender? There aren't any Donald and Douglas face packs on Shapeways. I was frustrated because I have models of the engines, but I couldn't really show them properly in the program. And I was rewatching some episodes, Thomas episodes, and I got to Thomas and the Missing Christmas Tree, and there was that one shot of one of the twins wearing one of Edward's faces. And I'm like, problem solved. The whole idea of Donald and Douglas being identical was to make it harder for the powers that be to know which is which, increasing the likelihood that they could stay on Sodor. They could both stay on Sodor. But once that happened, and their future was secure, they started to be able to sort of branch off from each other and forge their own paths and identities. So it wasn't so crucial that they remain identical in every way. So to my mind, Douglas's paint got scratched up after smushing that brake van. So he gets repainted into a different color. While, is my fucking car going off? Sorry, I had to move my car into the garage because the stupid alarm won't stop going off, and that only happens here. Ugh, I can't wait to get rid of that damn thing. Where was I? Right, so Donald is allowed to keep his black livery with a splash of orange here and there. But he gets a new tender because his old one got smashed up in the signal box. So he gets a Fowler tender like most of the other tender engines have. Look who's back. It's Cockeye. Why don't the trucks and diesels have colored faces? If you've seen Rolly's build day party, you'll know Mary and Bert have yellow faces. I didn't bother changing the face on my Brownie model because, you know, it's an homage to Paul H's character, Brownie. And as for the trucks, it's just a little too tricky and expensive to have several different colors of several different faces. I mean, I'm gonna have to buy duplicates to have them so I can paint their eyes looking in different directions because their eyes aren't changeable. And one of my medium-term projects is to swap out my Bachman and Hornby stuff with 3D printed stuff, mostly from Aki Mountain Railway's Shapeways page, which have big enough coupling hooks. So my Mega Bloks chains that act as my coupling chains are compatible with them. So what I'm going to do is paint all my vans with light gray roofs. So that's why all the trucks have gray faces. Will you ever make a behind-the-scenes video showing how you make sets, models, etc.? I'm not very good at behind-the-scenes stuff. I have an elastic on it because the decals keep peeling off. I started making a behind-the-scenes thing of how I made this bulgy model, and then I just kind of stopped, and I started making a behind-the-scenes, taking behind-the-scenes footage for Donald and Douglas when I started making those models, and then at some point I just kind of stopped. It's just not something I do. I'm not someone who whips out a camera and photographs and films every little thing. It just doesn't come naturally to me, because even when I have a mind to do it, it doesn't stick, because my priority is the project at hand. What are the names of the green shunter and the excavator? This is Sacramento, who if I had time I would have edited him, would have color corrected him to be red, have a red livery. Because apparently a J52 was trialed on the Metropolitan system in the late 50s. I'm not at the modeling stage where I can paint existing models yet. There's just too many components and modules to work around. But he doesn't move and roll in the right place, so if I had more time, more than a weekend, I could have done that. And this is just my Alfie. I've seen a lot of videos of excavators demolishing railway bridges or bridges over railways. And recently there was that engine on the Strasbourg Railway that got punched in the face by an excavator, sort of. I mean, the excavator wasn't moving, but... So I think there's room in the Thomas lore for a antagonistic excavator character. I think there's room in the lore for a protagonistic front-loader character as well. I'm sure someday my fanon for Jack's introduction will come to light, but it's a little complicated for now. Who is your favorite character from Tales from the Other Railway? Bowler. He's a germaphobe and he always gets twatted. How do you do the eye animation? Well, first I have the character, and then I have a PNG layer of whites, and then I have a PNG layer of eyeballs, and on top of that I have a cutout of the face with the eye holes cut out. And I get rid of any blemishes, unsightly blemishes, in the process. And I throw the reflection in there, and then I move them around in Sony Vegas's. I forgot the name of the tooling. I use my editing software, Sony Vegas, and that's another reason I'm having trouble continuing the series, because there's that black frame glitch. Sometimes you get at the beginning of each shot. It's not such a problem with episodes that have just a few shots, but with episodes like Rolly and Grabby and Rolly After Works. Rolly After Works was a nightmare to edit because there were so many shots. And virtually everyone had that glitch in front of it. And I'm not sure I have the time to learn another editing software. Where was I? How do you make your models and buildings? Well, I don't make my own buildings. They're all ready-made ones, except for this coal chute here, which is by Luca Bates. I try to write the names of the people who made the 3D models so I don't forget, so I can credit them. I try to write the names somewhere where it's hard to see. I don't remember where this chain came from. I've got another one over there. But yeah, that's just what I use. I like to think in Thomas Percy and the Coal, they could have been fixed by just one simple explanation. The chain got stuck. That's why it kept pouring down. And the models are just 3D printed body shells that I paint up and stick decals on. I showed you how I made my decals in my last Q&A. Does Rolly never speak because he can't, or does he just refuse to? I just think he has nothing to say. His expression says it all. What kind of paints do you use? Mostly apple barrel acrylics. I got some glow-in-the-dark paints as well. That's what I use for the black headlamps, the yellow and red. They're good. You just gotta shine a light on them for a couple hours and they'll glow in the dark. Will there be more Sir Topham Hatt's Railway stories? That's the plan. I got the next season written and recorded, and I'm in the process of taking photographs for the thumbnails. I've got all the new character models made. That's the PNGs of characters being introduced. Have you ever thought of adapting more Tales from the Other Railway? That's a big fat maybe. If people on Shapeways start putting out face packs for Brio models, I would definitely consider it. Do you have a car? Yes, and the stupid fucking thing keeps going off. I won't have it for much longer. One of the reasons I want to move is so I can be closer to work, so I don't need the damn thing. As far as I'm concerned, the general public shouldn't be driving itself around anyway. I was dragooned into getting a fucking driver's license. When I made Rolly and Birdie, and I did that shot of the bottle under the brake pad, somebody in the comments said, "You drive a Mazda," and I'm like, how the fuck does he know that? And then when I was showing it to my dad, he was like, I can see the Mazda logo on the car mat. I'm like, oh. I had to brighten that shot in Sony Vegas, because no matter what I did with it, with the camera, it would just look too shitty and dark. Couldn't see anything. But yeah, I just don't think about that kind of thing. And I don't care. Private transportation's an arrogant thing anyway. Whenever I tell people I want to get rid of my car and get a bike and live somewhere close to work, they're like, oh, you're doing your part for the environment. I'm like, yeah, but that's not my reason. Just as well, if we can get everybody off the road and just leave it with buses and trucks, that'd be wonderful. People shit on buses and I don't understand why. Actually, no, I totally do understand why, because people are like, I don't need to ride a bus, I could just drive myself around and I'm no dumbass, herp derp derp. Oh no, the median jumped out at me. Do you like railway songs like Cargo Moving People and I've Been Working on the Railway? I like A Man in a Train by Marty Robbins, and the instrumental versions you hear in Emperor of the North Pole, aka Emperor of the North. And I recently heard the Carnforth song, I like that. What are your favorite classes of steam, diesel, and electric locomotives? My favorite steam engine class is the Great Western Manor. They got me interested in what I consider a very impressive combination of light and strong, which led to my interest in the Somerset and Dorset 7Fs and the Southern Q1s and so forth. Diesel, I like the 22s, the BR class 22s. I dived into a book about Western Region diesel hydraulics, intending to do research on the class 35 Hymex, but I got out of that book deciding in my head, Bear will be the diesel hauler representing diesel hydraulics, but he won't be a 33 Hymec, he'll be a 22 Baby Warship, because everything I've read it, because what I've read about them is a lot more inspiring as far as character and story goes. There's just a lot more interesting information about them that I've found. Electric, I don't know, maybe Toby. Will there be more characters? Not in this damn show. What I like about the cast of Thomas, the resident cast of engines on Sodor, is the diversity. I know it's all the vogue to say there is no diversity these days, but on the contrary, there is plenty of diversity in the Thomas cast. Look at the tender engine roster. We have an American, we have a Pacific, we have a Mogul, we have a 10-wheeler. We got two 6 couples, but they're twins, so it's fine. With diesel haulers, we got Daisy, a diesel mechanical, Boko, a diesel electric, and Bear, a diesel hydraulic. The tank engine roster kind of screws things up. We got Thomas, a side tank, Percy, a saddle tank, Toby, a well tank, Duck, a pannier tank, Oliver, another side tank. Whoops. In my fanon, he's not a side tank. Nor are Bill and Ben saddle tanks, but I won't say no more just now. And those of you who have seen my Sir Tom and Matt's Railway series know I've introduced a consolidation and a prairie. And if you're thrown off by that side tank character I introduced, there's another category for me. It's foreign engines that were built in another country outside of Britain, and Brooke was built in America. More foreigners to follow as the series goes on. It's not a bad idea at all to have cultural diversity in your program, as long as you're not doing it just to be a dick. And if you're doing it just because it's all the vogue at the time, you're a dick. What is it like to film these shorts? Frustrating, but therapeutic. I do a lot of computer work and shit most of my time. I spend most of my fortnights doing computer work, so every other weekend to do something tangible is very therapeutic. I'm very much disillusioned with CGI and even 2D animation. I respect them as mediums, but they're just not my cup of tea. I do like when a camera is pointing at something. I don't mind the odd special effect here and there, but over-reliance on CGI is just so... Ugh. I remember I was watching a trailer for Soul. I never bothered seeing it, but I remember being like, this CGI looks good, so why does this look so crappy? It's a paradox. As CGI gets more advanced, the shittier the production values are. Because I know in my heart I'm not looking at anything. And there's a lot of CGI things that don't look real at all. I don't know what happened to Dobby in the Harry Potter movies. He looked so shitty in movie 7. In movie 2, it's like he's there. In movie 7, he's not selling me at all. People were so cut up about him dying, and I'm just like, there's nothing there. What happened? The Toy Story movies looked great. But by this point, Sheriff Woody has had so many details piled onto him, he doesn't even look real anymore. Still, people's reluctance to use models is understandable. They can be frustrating. But it's one of those things you can laugh about it way later, even if you don't at the time. Those blooper reels should be a good indication of that. What happened to the Tug stories in the opening of Flooded? Those were taken from fanfics written by me and, you probably know him as Rail Raider 1. On SIF, because I needed something to accompany the opening music. The ones I wrote back in the day were shit. I've since written better ones. Link in the description. And as far as Tug's fanfics goes, I've got, mountains of ideas. I've done not as much research as I have in railway circles, but enough to inspire something of a revamp. My great-granddad worked on a log drive. Won't say no more just now. What is the mouse called? I just called him my supervisor because I'd be working on an episode and then I'd look up and he'd be there and I'd be like, you watching me work? At one point I picked up the cat and brought her face to the mouse and they just sniffed at each other. And then sometime later I saw them actually tussling on the floor. Not even fighting, not just kind of like she'd swipe at him, he'd jump at her. It was ridiculous. If someone were to reboot the Thomas series properly, should they use models, CGI, or 2D animation? Models. Not necessarily the models, but models. In this mountain of purism that we're seeing, every now and then a mold breaker will pop out. I've seen models of Thomas with straight running plates and running plates painted black. Project Tiger Moth is what I'd call a good start. Like, I love the shades of blue and green and brown on the models. The next logical step, paint the running plates black and shrink the faces a little bit to look like smoke box doors, like they did with Duck and Donald Douglas and Bill and Ben. Why the hell not? Iron out the kinks. Fuck purism. Least favorite Railway series character? Probably the Skarloey engines, because they're just carbon copies of the Talclin engines, and the two sets of lore don't fit together. I mean, with the mainline engines, you've got this combination of so many different elements and so many different sources of story inspiration. The Skarloey is just one railway and one fleet of engines. Duke is the closest we get to the mold breaker. You could swap out the fictitious names for the real names and barely change a thing. The only big change would be like the tunnel. You could conceivably swap out the mainline engines whenever they appear for real engines, like Great Western Manor, a BR standard 410 wheeler. I think they're called the Stroke 3s. I think. Or are the tank Stroke 3s? I don't know. The 2-foot 3-inch gauge, I think, is unique to Britain, so what I'm thinking is you keep Skarloey and Rheneas, they represent the Talclin. You keep Sir Handel and Peter Sam, they represent the Chorus. You lose Rusty, replace him with basically Alf, who represents Huncote Colliery. And instead of one gallery in the Slate Quarry, there's 3. And each one is worked by a different engine representing another 2-foot 3-inch gauge railway. You got a representative of the Campbellton and Machrihanish Chevalier. You have a representative of the Plinlimmon and Hafen Tramway, Talabont. You have a representative from John Shaw and Sons Limited, the Scotchman. And then at the port, where the slate is delivered, you have a shunter in the form of the Petro-Electric... I don't think she had a name, but I believe she worked at York Gasworks. My information is a little incomplete on those last 2 engines. but I keep hitting dead ends when I try to look them up. Anyone know where I can find a source of information on John Shaw and Sons Limited? Let me know. I'm still looking for story inspiration. I know a fair amount about the engine, the Scotchman herself. Apparently she had a spark arrestor and side plates. She was a Bagnall Margaret, for those who don't know. Been to the Audrey extravaganza? I've been to the UK twice, once in 2009, once in 2014, and at this point it looks like my days of international travel are over. Because there was a stint where I would go to America for a weekend, attending conventions, and then the new flu came about and travel restrictions got all germophobic and shit. They still kind of are. May change in the future, I don't know, but for now, I'm not aiming for it. What made you decide to make Bachman shorts based on Paulsvid's Rolly? Mostly the missing coach leaks. I just really wanted to make that joke of Rolly as the missing coach, and I had some other ideas surrounding it. And now I've done that. Do you think Murdoch has potential as a character? I certainly think there's room for a 210-0. I mean, like I said before, we have all these other wheel arrangements represented. And I think there's certainly room in the main cast for a BR standard, and it might as well be one with a unique wheel arrangement. But as for being someone who desires peace and quiet, it's pretty thin. I like to imagine this character is very pessimistic and just waiting for the next time. I'm thinking she, because I think they were partially derived from the WD Stroke 10s. I'm thinking she's been in and out of scrapyards. There are stories of engines that have been withdrawn and then brought back into service because there was nothing suitable to take its place. And there's a story that we might have had a sole surviving Great Western Saint, but the person who bought him realized too late that it was too long to get down his sloping driveway on a low loader, and so he had it sent back to the scrapyard. So this engine is just waiting for the next time it gets withdrawn, and is just very pessimistic. There's a story Donald Beale told about a 9F who took a long rake of, I think there was 12 coaches up a steep bank, and the driver was freaked out how easy she took the bank and kept looking back thinking some coaches broke away. So yeah, I think there's room for a 9F, but Murdoch, his character premise is too thin. Looking back on it, what do you think of Ghosts and Magic? I can't believe I thought that was going to be my magnum opus. It came out over 10 years ago. I didn't think I'd live this long, friggin'. The only thing I'm really happy with it at this point is the role Peter Sams and Duncan's crews play. Their drivers and firemen play big roles. This video came out recently of hidden gems of the CGI era, and honestly, without the crews, the CGI era is shit. Their drivers and firemen are just mindless zombies along for the ride. They have no sway. They're just there. It's ridiculous. Ghosts and Magic may be a shitty story, but I am very happy with the personalities and roles in the story I was able to give to Peter Sam's driver and fireman, and Duncan's driver and fireman. I made them characters in the story, and I'm very happy with that still. Will the riffs ever make a comeback? Probably not. What happened to your finger? Ripped a chunk of skin off it at work. How does Rolly feel to be neglected by almost every engine who pulls him? About how he looks. Oh, it's bleeding again. What was your favorite and least favorite episodes to film? Rolly and Birdie went pretty smoothly, apart from that one lady who wouldn't stand up on the platform. I got the money shot of George and the post van hitting the cattle truck in one take, and the post van's wheel bouncing away and hitting the two porters on the platform was completely by accident. Least favorite, Rolly's red light, because I was busy that weekend, so I had to film something short, and even then I was not in the mood. How did you make George's rollers detachable? It's actually a stunt model. Just a spare broken one I had. I got this one and it broke, and I got a new one, but they're like decades old, by the way. But I held on to this one and this roller because I knew one day I'd most likely need a stunt in. This was before I even got into filming. I just had a feeling I'd need a George with a detachable roller to use in a stunt. And it happened. Were Thomas's Westinghouse brakes replaced after that accident? Nope, he still has them. How long did Rolly spend at the washdown after he was part of the Kipper? Washdown? What do you dislike most about Thomas remakes and stories made by fans? Purism, lack of research, CGI, AI voices. The Alec Baldwin one was the most convincing one I've ever heard. Like I said before, sometimes I'll see Thomas, versions of Thomas with a straight running plate, And sometimes I'll see characters with black running plates, and even sometimes with smoke box door shaped sized faces. But one thing I rarely see is Henry with no splashers. I do not understand. I never understood why he got his splashers back in season 2, and I never see. It bugged the shit out of me when I was a youngster. It bugs the shit out of me even more now. Did you know that in the pre-production stages of the pilot Down the Mine, Thomas had 4 coaches? I did hear that, but didn't draw much inspiration from it for a Rolly short. Who knows, maybe the next person to take up the Rolly mantle will. Which is worse, Don't Be Silly Billy or Middle Engine? Don't Be Silly Billy is just plain brainless, whereas Middle Engine has chunks of credibility. On the Cambrian Railway, some siding arrangements were pretty awkward, to a point where on some goods trains, 1 or 2 wagons would be propelled in front of the locomotive and the rest of the train dragged behind. Why the hell are Ari and Bert... Why was this not Bill and Ben? Why? Why are Ari and Bert suddenly just a bunch of shitheads? Just another bunch of generic bullies. Oh, season 6 in general is just so frustrating. There are nuggets of good here and there, but the desire to produce the show for a quick turnaround really took its toll very quickly. Generic bully characters are all bums can cope with. That's why the Diesel conflict just kept resolving and then coming back, because the bums couldn't think of any other kind of conflict. What about the road versus rail thing? We never saw that in the hit era, did we? And I don't think we ever saw it in the CGI era either. But they don't want to do any research because they're not interested. And if you're not interested, why do you want to work on this show? Because it makes a lot of money. We want that money. You effectively want a slice of a pie you don't know how to make. Memory card filled up. This is going to be a bitch to edit. And they had some good ideas with the characters they introduced. It's a good idea to have an elderly Diesel, but they chose a bassist that's younger than all the main cast. And a crane tang engine was a good step. It's classified in the white notation system as CT, so the fact that it has side text doesn't really matter because it's classified as a crane tank. Then they just make him a generic bullying victim. If I were in charge, that would not be happening. Instead, we'd get our first steam locomotive antagonist. And it seems like every other season introduced steam-powered road vehicle. Season 2 gave us Trevor the traction engine, Season 4 gave us George the steamroller, Season 6 gave us Elizabeth the sentinel lorry. Ed Gulling held on to the franchise. In Season 8 we might have got a showman's engine, or a stump puller, or a plowing engine. And I could forgive the unrealism of James and the Red Balloon if the main story was the hot air balloon carried news people taking footage of every little minor insignificant little mishap that occurs on the railway and then having it be front page news. James sort of reacts to the red balloon every time he sees it like a paranoid guy reacting to a drone anytime he sees one, or anytime he thinks he sees one. He's so nervous about the publicity that he doesn't realize that their passenger numbers are increasing, and at the answer top Matt tells him, well, you know what news is? It's anything out of the ordinary. If railway accidents were as frequent as road accidents, they'd lose their news value. And the models look terrible. When I was a kid, I wasn't confused by the Shining Time Station movie because I used to watch that before TVO Kids started airing individual episodes at 10:55 a.m. So nobody had any reason to watch Shining Time Station anymore. So I wasn't confused by it, but at the time, the only element of the movie that pissed me off was the models. They looked terrible. Favorite Thomas episodes? Top 5, Ghost Train, Thomas Goes Fishing, Wrong Road, Bullseyes, and I'll say Busy Going Backwards. Or maybe James and the Trouble with Trees. I want to put something from season 5 in there. Something David Maidman influenced. Favorite Railway series books? This is going to be a bit contradictory to something I said earlier, but what I'd like to do is read the Scarlowy Railway books and just mentally swap out the fictitious names with the real names, like I said, up to a point that works pretty well. I always end up forgetting the name of the real guy who inspired Mr. Bobby, though. Boutros, was it? I don't know. Final question. By the way, I copied the questions onto a Google document in case a robot stung my video and removed the comments. Will there ever be a model version of Stray Terrier or Sir Tom and Matt's railway video? If I could find a way to make models of Mildred and Eunice, I would definitely consider it. I guess that's it. I seem to remember there being a video about a model showcase. I don't remember if I've covered it. I can't remember if I put it in here or not, but just in case I didn't, the question was something like, will you ever make a model showcase? There they are. days here for Percy and James. Incidentally, it says that you need a Bachmann piano tank chassis to go in here, but it doesn't quite fit. You got to cut a bit out of the cab, which I'm going to do later, and a bit off the front of the chassis. 2 years ago, I would have just written this off as a waste of time and money. But yeah, now I'm sanding and cutting and shit. So yeah, I'm still doing shit. Just it's unlikely I'll ever make more Rolly the Bachman Coach skits. I had fun overall. Had my ups and my downs, and I'll have my ups and downs with every project I tackle from here on. So yeah, and like I said, there were 2 years of Rolly the Coach. Now we've had 2 years of Rolly the Bachman Coach. Only time will tell what'll come next and who will spearhead it. So thanks for viewing. Thanks for the feedback. I'm glad people are able to enjoy things the way I see them, or at least find them interesting and want to know why I think the way I do. So in the short term, things you can expect from this channel will be some more short bits, like some more George Carlin audiobook mashups, or joke videos like the cows thing. I still want to try that, some stuff I mentioned in my previous Q&A, like the Thomas Goes Fishing adaptation with as many narrators as possible, and that that watermill, that hour-long watermill thing. I'm working on Percy now. I have Thomas, I have Toby, I have Douglas. I'm working on Percy now, and after I'm done James, I want to work on Mavis. There's a serviceable body shell on Sparkshot's Shapeway shop. This is by Pix Productions, by the way. I'm not sure what I'm going to do for Daisy, though. I saw somebody, I think it was Keeper of Toast, show a work in progress of a 3D printed Daisy body shell. And if I have another ADD attack, I might reconsider bringing back Batman reviews. Because like I said, I've got photographs to take and I want to reboot the Stray Terrier. So yeah, thanks for watching, and keep your eyes off the prize.